All right, hello wine drinking people. It's time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday. And we have been busy little wine drinkers over here at the Wine Watch all year long. And this is one of our most best values we've ever done ever in a wine tasting. $75 for 20 wines? Are you kidding me? I had several people leave that night and I thanked them. They said, no, Andrew, thank you. Just the 4 vintages of Sassicaia was enough. I mean, was more than enough for $75. Plus, we fed you, and we give you 4 other flights of wines, 16 other wines on top of the Sassicaias. And, you know, I think a lot of people were surprised because, you know, Sassicaia is considered one of the top wines in Tuscany, in Italy. And a lot of the other wines on the table, I thought, stood up to the Sassicaia. And, you know, some people, the Tenuta Sette Ponti Areno maybe thought was even better. A bigger wine, Sassicaia being more about elegance, the Areno being more a powerful wine, having a little more showy oak to it. Anyways, all these properties, outstanding. Kobrand has got a great book of Italian wines, but we got to work on pricing here, man. You know, you go on Wine Searcher today, and people can look up these things as we're sending out the prices and see that, you know, they are selling for substantially less in other places. We do offer you exceptional service, but we understand you're only going to pay so much for that. Anyways, we had a great flight of the Reserva, the single vineyard Brunello from Silvio Nardi, and this is a wine produced for the first time in 1995. The oldest vineyard on the property, planted more than 40 years ago. They do use some new barrique for this also. You know, they call them new school for that, 1 year in small barrique, and then that spends, I think, 18 months in large Slavonian oak. But we had the 99, the 2003, the 2004, and the 2006 vintage on the table. The 99 vintage really starting to come around, showing some lovely fresh earth porcini mushroom notes, that red berry fruit notes. Smooth and silky on the tongue. One of the things that happens to Brunello after it gets older, really elegant, some lovely earthy and truffly notes, black truffles, very balanced on the finish. Nice structure, though, with these 99s, and great freshness, some wild strawberry fruit showing through all the way to the end. Lovely nuance, most excellent juice here. 2003, a lighter vintage, a hot year, very forward involved. Several people said they liked this wine the best. Similar, you know, spices and fruit coming out in this, but just the tannins a lot less, and the structure in this wine, you can tell it's not going to age for a long, long time. 2004, however, a vintage that is built for the ages. All of the 2004s at this tasting proved why 2004 is a vintage you want in your cellar, not just from Tuscany, but from the Piedmont. A very classic vintage, and wines that still are showing maybe a little bit of hard tannins to them, a little chalky note on the finish to that tar and earth coming through in this wine, but lovely elegance and freshness in these wines, and they have fruit, they just need time. 2006, maybe a little more forward, still showing some of its baby fat, but lovely structure in these wines as well. Just didn't seem as dry as the 2004s or as long on the finish, but a little more drinkable now. It's kind of surprising. 2006, also a more classic style vintage in Tuscany. A great vintage, wines that you want to have in your cellar as well. But for me, the winner in this first flight was the 2004, and a toss-up between the 99 and 2006. Next up, we had the Tenuta di Nozzole, Il Pareto, and this is a historic estate located in the Chianti Classico region, in Greve and Chianti, and this wine is part of the Folonori family since 1971, but the estate dates back to the 1300s. Wow. They have a long history of making wine in Italy. If you don't know, the Romans were the people that brought the grapevines throughout Europe and propagated them before France and a lot of these other countries started growing grapes. But the Il Nozzole, the Il Pareto, is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon from a single vineyard, approximately 350 meters, so you get lovely freshness in this wine. And the 07, 04, 95, and 87 were the vintages on the table, and what a treat to be able to try the 87. I believe this was the first vintage, and incredible looking at these wines. The color was not that different from the 87 to the 07. This wine still had an incredible nose. The 87, a fresh, proud black earth, black tar-like notes, smooth and silky on the tongue with layers of kind of damp earth and silky tannins, and some fruit left in this wine, still amazingly fresh, and 25 years old, drinking at or near its peak, but like I said, still incredible wine. The 1995, a much better vintage. You know, 87 was not considered a very good vintage by most in Tuscany. 95, a classic vintage in Tuscany. This wine had some lovely bell pepper notes to it and herbs, to that currant and plum fruit on the nose, a bit of the green green herbal note showing, and a little bit musty also, a little bit earthy, but that blew off a little with a little time in the glass. A little bit of that green and herbal note still showing through at the end, but still some fruit here and lovely complexity and a long finish, lovely structure and freshness on that wine. The 2004, like I said, the 2004s all night long were just showing up, and this wine had lovely currant cassisberry fruit, a really rich and well-endowed bouquet, big and chewy on the tongue, lots of tannin, lots of structure. These 04s need some time, lots of everything, but just need to come together. In 10 years, this wine will be singing. And the 07, a more forward vintage, a warm year, dark currant and cassis fruit, kind of damp spice and earth there as well. Some toasty oak coming through in this. A very forward and drinkable young Cabernet, though. Smooth and round tannins on the finish. A really excellent bottle of wine. But the 2004 won out again for me in that flight. The Tenuta Sette Ponti was up next. And this wine, a lot of people don't know about this wine. I may have served this after the Sassicaia. It is a Bordeaux blend, and mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, but a lot more oak and a lot more richness in this wine. The Sassicaia more about elegance. And again, we had the 2004 vintage here, 06, 08, and 2010. Fresh juice, man. Don't give us any of that old wine. The 04 had that lovely structure of the 04 vintage, and still a lot of intense fruit, dark cherry, black currant fruit, that black earth, and showing a lot of tannins on the finish, but again, a lot of everything else. Lovely freshness, most excellent juice. The 06, well, according to my notes, I actually like that wine, and the 2010 the best in this flight. But just narrowly edging out the 04 here, right black currant, toasty oak, spice, espresso, floral notes, a little more of intensity of fruit here on the tongue, sweet, ripe currant and cassisberry fruit, some wood tannins also showing up in this wine. Like I said, this Tenuta Sette Ponti Reno wine, a blockbuster, a really big wine. The 08, almost liqueur-like in concentration here and depth of fruit, pencil lead showing on this one. The oak becoming a little more evident in these younger wines, 08 and the 2010, but still good struct and depth of fruit, maybe the 08. Just a little more forward and not quite as tannic as the 06 or the 2010, which this wine's still a baby here. Nice concentration and depth of flavors. Maintaining that old world flair still throughout this whole flight, but still you could see, these guys are picking this wine ripe, and it's got, 14.5% alcohol. Not that that's high for Tuscany, but there's some people certainly that are lower than that. I think in the Il Pareto, at least the older vintages are 13.5%, but still a wonderful wine. All four of those Reno wines. Like I said, we just got to work on the pricing on these here. Okay, well, the next up is Sassicaia, one of the top, Super Tuscans. Actually, the first Super Tuscan, the first vintage, 1968. We do have a signed bottle of that available if anybody's interested in obtaining that. It's for several $1,000s a bottle, as is the 85 vintage, the first wine ever to score 100 points from Robert Parker Jr. That wine sells upwards of $2,000 a bottle, but you can still get the current release for right around $200 or just under that from Tenuta San Guido. We have 04, 06, 07, and 2009 on the plate, on the table here. And the 04, this was the most disappointing of all the 04s to me. This wine just didn't have, it seemed the depth and the concentration of the other 04s, but a really nice and elegant wine. And maybe it's just because of how we showed it here after the much bigger Areno wines. The 06 was the wine of the flight for me. This wine had a lovely peppery note to it, to that currant and cassisberry fruit, some dark chocolate and fresh herbs there, and that peppery spice lasted all the way through the finish with loads of minerality and some graphite notes. A really lovely concentration of richness in that wine. The 07 also most excellent. This wine had some lovely fruit to it, sage, fine herbs, toasty oak, some toffee and peppery notes too, smooth and silky on the tongue with a lot of ripe fruit, very forward but very balanced. And like I said, the Sassicaia wine, all about elegance. And then the 2009, and this is a wine that's won some awards. 2009, throughout Europe, produced these wines with lovely ripe tannins. This wine had some lovely cassis and currant berry fruit, dark chocolate, and earth. A bit shy at first, but opened up nicely. Just seemed a little bit light on everything at the end for me. I'll have to try that wine again. Sarah, anytime you're in town with the 2009 Sassicaia, just call me up. Maybe I didn't get a good, really look at it the first time. And then one of my favorite things in the world, the Nebbiolo varietal, the Michele Chiarlo Cerrequio, as if, like I said, all these 16 wines were not enough. A little extra treat for you guys, and you always showed Nebbiolo last. Nebbiolo has a perfume and spice of Pinot Noir, but it has the power of Bordeaux or Cabernet Sauvignon, and these wines last an incredibly long time. We had the 93 as the old dog. 93 not considered a great vintage in the Piedmont, but this wine still showing beautifully. A couple people said it was their favorite wine on the table. Some camphor, kind of earth and little tar notes on the nose. Strong herbal nuance to the finish here, and that tar spicy note kind of lasting to the end. But had nice fruit still hanging in there, and nice freshness here. This wine's still in excellent condition, the 93. The 99, awesome. I love 99. This is a vintage that the producers raved about, a classic style vintage. Still has a lot of fruit left in this wine. These tannins are just starting to mellow out in this wine to where these wines are very nice and drinkable. Black tar and licorice, some floral notes there, and just a classic vintage in the Piedmont. This wine still needs more years to go in your cellar. Most excellent. And then the 04. This wine was killer wine of the night for me, and I don't know, maybe it is the Piedmont, but spiced red cherry fruit, pretty floral nose, earthy, truffly notes to that tar, classic Barolo nose, and fine tannins on the palate, really big, echoing that spice and earth from the nose through the finish. This line is tightly wound, but will reward those with patience. I love this 2004 vintage in the Piedmont. 2007, a bit more forward, but still really nice. This 07 is a good amount of earthy, truffly notes to the bouquet, fresh, some black spices, really nice bottle of wine, and seem to be drinking pretty good for a young Barolo, but still a lot of tannins in this wine. It is Barolo after all. Still needs a little time in the cellar, but most excellent juice. The 2007 Michele Chiarlo Cerrecchio, as was everything we had on the table. What a killer tasting. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for the folks from Kobrand for helping put this on. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.